Yes. And before we move on to the next question, for many of the viewers, when we, as African people, when we want to refer to our past, there's a lot of connotation as to our ancestors being primitive. That is not true. That is absolutely nonsense. There is no primitive people who can build Great Zimbabwe in the way that Great Zimbabwe was built. There is no primitiveness that can build the pyramids of Egypt that cannot be explained today as to how and who built them. They marvel. They come and take photos. They send their scientists and archaeologists. Up to now, they can't figure out how a 6-ton brick was picked up and used in the construction of other thousands and thousands of bricks and probably millions of bricks to make the pyramid of Egypt. There are no cranes. Okay, in our primitive observation of the past, there were no cranes, there were no bulldozers, there were no big machinery. So how were those things built? So right there and right then, what we remember about our past is the time when our ancestors were in lamentation, were in hiding. They were being persecuted. They lost the smarts and the intelligence of hieroglyphics and how to write. Writing did not start with the Europeans. It started with us. Everything started with us. Everything that they're doing, there's nothing that is new that is being done up to today. Even all this technology. And as we move forward, we're going to talk about scientists like Kurumbi, and it's utter nonsense that we are always referring to our ancestors as primitive. So to the next question, if African spirituality and the African Hebrew faiths are the same, then where did the misunderstanding come from?
Awesome question, that one. A number of scholars and researchers have identified a group of Europeans called the Khazarian Jews in Khaza. Their origin is well documented. There's a book, The 13th Tribe, explains all that. So what happened was, as Hebrews, or I have indicated, they were. You read a lot of stories. They were called Ethiopians. So as we fought battles from the people that came from the north and they lost these battles, many of our mothers and sisters were captured and taken over into Europe. And people that are in war and running away, I think they cannot continue to keep civilization in its state. So we lost a lot of it. However, prophecies and the cultural activities identify us as the original people, because the other Hebrews, the source of their tradition is the Talmud. And the Talmud, we know it originated in Babylon. So they wrote all the Talmud and all that story. Unfortunately, some of our pharaohs, the last 3 pharaohs, 585, just before 585, allowed the Greeks to come in and start our mysteries against the taboo of the red line that I spoke about. And because of that, the nature of knowledge that we deal with as Bantu's original people is that once you reveal the core of it, you lose it. Ufumura. Ufumura, yes, or kutipikwa, unotipikwa. That's another, So, and the people that are using them know that, and they reverse everything. That's where it all comes from. But however, the traditions, the cultures that we have can be read like a note, like notes in the Torah and in the book of Coming Forth by Day, which is largely a manual for burying a person who has passed on, and also how to conduct ourselves on the earth so that when we are judged, we are allowed to join our ancestors, or we are recycled back until we are able to go through that phase. So these people that we speak of, the Hebrews from Europe, currently ruling in Middle East, in Palestine, they don't have totems. And Genesis 49 has totems. And also they trace their ancestry through the mother, while the genealogies in the Torah are through the father. And they are not the ones, because the blessings and the cursings avoid them. And they follow us across the whole earth. So that's the difference between us end them. They are not original. There's no way. I debated with them on television. I've debated with a lot of them. They know the truth. If you read the book, The 13th Tribe, it's very clear. And if you read the other book by Nana Adankwa, Africans who wrote the Bible, it explains it so clearly. Their names are so openly Bantu. If you look at them, you'll be shocked. I'll give an example. Take the current Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. He is a Russian. You can go to Wikipedia, research him. He has a Russian name, Milowinsky or something, and they adopted the name Netanyahu. Take any Jewish name, look at it, resolve it in a Bantu way. It will come straight. My video, like the one I have given you, has that context of the stories in the Torah and the names that come up on them. You do an academic research and study. You take Strong's Concordance and say, I want to see this name, its meaning. Then Strong's Concordance will say the meaning or the derivation of this name is unknown. But when you come to the context of our Ubuntu, that name is easily resolved. I'll just do a few names so that I don't waste much of our time. Take the name of King Solomon. If you write Solomon in the current square Hebrew, it's Shlomo, Shlomo. Now we know as Bantus, especially from Southern Africa, that S and C are one word. So if you say Shlomo, I can say Chiromo. R and L interchange. So what was Solomon popular about? It was his mouth. He spoke a lot of it was wisdom that he spoke.
Wisdom. Mm-hmm.
Wisdom. So he spoke a lot. So he was he used his mouth to speak a lot of teachings. So Chiromo, Mambo Chiromo. That was his name.
There is a book by your mentor, Elder Gustav Katifu's book.
In honor of his intellectual effort, and he's a reserved man. I like him that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes geniuses are not easy to interact and associate with.
Very true.
He is the man when we started to interact, and the Church of God and Saints of Christ, Elder Risnamonji Kwindima Association, and we were desirous of taking the organization up an intellectual note, and we met resistance, and then we decided to move out. Gustav was apportioned the Office of Research and Linguistics, and he has done a marvelous, awesome job. So that book, The Bona Fide Children of Hebrew Israelite of the Books of Moses, the one that is in my YouTube channel that I promoted, is the one that gave birth to my YouTube channel. Was when I uploaded that, that's when my son, who had encouraged me to have these videos, that's when he said, these things that you always teach us on every Sabbath, a lot of people are interested. Look, you now have about 1,000 views. I said, what? And he said, yeah. And from there, I started on, it was his book. And all my knowledge on linguistics, specifically Arabic, as well as Hebrew, it's him who taught it to me. When I'm stuck, it's him that I refer to, because he can speak Hebrew, he can speak Arabic, he can read it, he has deciphered it, a lot of it. And although now I've gone to hieroglyphics and I do hieroglyphics, but that is where my birthplace in terms of linguistics originated. His work is good. We wish to promote it and to say people must read it and have it in their library. Okay,
so you mentioned the translations of most of the biblical characters. However, why are biblical characters not known in African spirituality? I mean, our African spirituality is not a written book thing because of the fact that we have been detached from our distant past. So we really rely on just direct spirituality, spirit mediums, traditional healers, cultural gatekeepers, elders in the community, passing on information through oral tradition. And all in regards to, well, it could be the same in most parts of Southern Africa, but in regards to, in Zimbabwe's situation, if I could put it this way, prior to the missionaries coming with the pioneer column and with their missionaries and mercenaries to teach us about the gospel and set up their cathedrals and mission schools. We only knew of characters such as Chamiluka, Neanda, Kagui, and most of the not so far ancestors who also did manifest amongst us. We were not told about Jesus. We were not told about Mudavadi. We were not told about Abarahama. We were not told of Sekai. How did the miscommunication, or is there some kind of lack of clarity here?
The war situation, that because we did not decide to move from the central Great Lakes to Southern Africa. Some of us were already in Southern Africa with our own traditions and culture already prior to the history of the Hebrews. Because remember, these Hebrews have a history, and their history begins with Abraham about 1700 BCE. I am very liberal at that. Whereas our race as people is 2.5 million years ago. 2.5 million years. I can prove it. I've got a video of a nuclear plant built in Gabon by our ancestors. It's 2.5 million years ago. That plant was already running, generating electricity.
I hope viewers are listening here. I hope they're listening to this part right here.
Yeah, and conforming to the laws of nature without the disaster of current nuclear studies. There is a lot of evidence about that, but scientists hide it. And therefore, we are talking about 2.5 million years ago. If we use the solstice cycle in ancient Kemet and the great year cycle in ancient Kemet, it goes to 5 billion years when our ancestors were already on the earth. And the age of the Sphinx itself, which is a totem of the lion tribe, is about 800,000 years old. So we have had a lot of ice ages across our era. So we are talking, when we talk of Hebrews, honestly, we are speaking of a history of 1,700 years ago versus a history of almost 1,000,000 years ago. So Hebrews, their history is quite clear. They adopted totems in Genesis 49 through Jacob. So if you say, okay, Isaac, Jacob's father, what was his totem? He had no totem. What about Abraham? What was his totem? He had no totem. But guess what? If you go to the Genesis story of the creation of Adam and Eve, the person Adam is Atema, is Atum. He had a totem. Eve is Ivu, soil. She had a totem. And one of the battling totems was Vahoshi, which is the serpent, which was in the garden. So they were farmers. They were farmers. So Cain had a totem or plants or herbs. And the Abel's totem was the sheep, which he sacrificed. So how come Abraham doesn't have a totem? Because Abraham's names, if you resolve those names, are for the father of the Hamites, Abraham. It was grouping all of them, and then Moses was writing this, taking it from Kemetic sources. So you will not find these names in our tradition because of the fact that our history does not begin 1,700 years ago by Abraham. Our history is beyond that. However, some of our tribes went all over in Europe, married in Europe, and they have this record. And the record itself speaks about us, the four rivers. There is no other continent mentioned in Genesis. Listen to this fact. Not even Europe, not even America, not even Russia, China, or any mentioned in Genesis. It's Africa, the four rivers of Africa, the two rivers of the Nile, Euphrates and Tigris. And now they play a trick with us. They come and say, Middle East. There was no Middle East. Middle East is a creation of them. And then they say Western Asia. There's no Western Asia. Asia is part of Africa. Europe is part of Africa. Is one country. Then you've got Oceania as other country. You have America as other country. Then you have got the tripartite of countries, which gives us the term tribes. So I can tell you which tribes were in Africa, which were the original Melanin Dominant Humans, and also tribes across and along the equator. The darker you are is along the equator, the lighter you are is away from the equator. Once you are close to equator, you are close to the knowledge, the pattern of the cosmic totems, the stars, the sun, as you spoke of Guarara Kurumbi. So that's how we will never find it. If you debate on that in a very narrow sense, you can also miss it, because I can quote Zephaniah 3:10, which says, the daughters of might dispersed beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. And the Ethiopia spoken of at that time, is not the current Ethiopia. It is the South Sudan. Which rivers are spoken of is the Congo, the Niger, the Kasambabeza, Limpopo, Sabe River. This is where we are. So the totem, the prophecy suits us very well, despite the fact that you have raised legitimate linguistic issues of names that they are not amongst us. But the practices, the belief in one creator, the reverence of ancestors, the burial customs, Midiro or Mpiro or festivals, or all that, and it makes us the people of that book, whether it started 1,000 years ago or not. It's still the same story. That's not the argument. The argument is the characters, the behaviors, the traditions, the story. Where does the story end? Does the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob end in the Bible only? No, it goes beyond that.
Awesome. So what I figured out, we're going to take a short break, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to log back on. This is it is information that needs concentration, and it's going to be a very long class. We might as well just call it a class, with a lot of information that you will never find anywhere. This is great. This is a great opportunity. 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll see you back.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Teacher Rabbi LMDumizulu of Khamiti Hiburu Ethics. Maarifado. Injan Longe, Makadime say, reality is reviewed in the present moment.